Right, let's get a fire going. It's that temperature, and it seems that's as hot as it's going to get because the sun's gone down now. I've kept myself warm with a hot bath. So, if ever you were curious as to see what the extent of oxidization does to aluminium, there we go. That is, I wouldn't recommend this, by the way. In Belgium they do fruit beers, and Hoegaarden has jumped onto the fruit beer train with Hoegaarden Rosé, Goût Framboise, or raspberry flavoured wheat beer for you and I. Now, it is nice, and I can't admit there's a nice, forgive me for using this term, but I don't know a better term. It has a pleasant mouthfeel to it, which I don't think you can get with barley-based beer. It's a wheat beer, you see. I'm just trying to think. Has Murphy's got a nice mouthfeel? Because that is also barley. You know what? I'm going to have to get some Irish Stout. Maybe Guinness, because that's the popular one. But I really like Murphy's. And I'm going to have to drink it. And I'm going to have to see if it's... I just realised, when I was at college, there was this half Irish, half English bloke. And I used to get on quite well with him. He could drink more than me, of course. So we go to the pub, and I'd always get myself Murphy's because, well, I like Murphy's, but also I wanted to show him, it's like, look, I, like you, enjoy Irish Stout. Funny enough, I wasn't the only one that drank like that. There was one chap there, and what he used to do, every so often, this guy was brown, but he would eat bacon. Maybe he was one of those Catholic subcontinentals that I hear so much about. Now, he occasionally would drink excuse me whilst I get these ashes moved. He was fond of Guinness with a dash of blackcurrant in it, and he would call that his liquid lunch, because Guinness is more substantial than other pints. Not sure I believe the logic of that, but I tried it once and I thought, this is quite pleasant. This reminds me of Belgian fruit beer. The first one I tried, by the way, is this lovely one called Bellevue Kriek. So that, I think, is the Flemish for cherries, which is cerise in French. And yeah, very pleasant. I think, if I'm right in saying this, it used to come in these little 33 centilitre bottles, or maybe it was half litre bottles. It came with a cork, and I really like that. And the other thing is, you know, occasionally you get wine and it's been corked and it's vinegary. Well, with Alambic, you kind of want it to be corked because it's not the bacteria, it's the wild yeast which gives it the sour taste. And that's why they use sugar. But they got to use the sugar after fermentation's done. And I think that's why it comes in a little champagne bottle, because they understand that if they put a bit of sugar in it, it's going to start re-fermenting in the bottle. And so you want to take precautions against that. And maybe this is why Hoegaarden and the likes of that sort, in order to avoid the engineering and logistics challenges and being able to put their drink in a can rather than in a champagne bottle, they'll just cheap out and use some artificial sweetener, which won't cause the re-fermentation. It won't cause it to re-ferment. I've got to pause this because if you see here, that's all I've got in my kindling. 1 moment, please. Right, I'm back. So, I've got my my bucket of sticks. Oh look, it's a bundle of sticks. How's that then? Yeah. If you're subscribed to the channel, or you've been browsing and you see, oh, it's just him in front of a fire. Oh, that's different. It's him driving. What car's that? Well, I did have a drive New Year's Eve. I asked my family, I said, look, I've got a bottle of Prosecco here, drank the champagne, I had a bottle over Christmas, and then I had another bottle for my sister's birthday. And I had a really good time, actually. I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but I played pool with her, and that was good. Given these a scrub, hopefully as this warms up it won't have that nasty wax pong to it. And as you can see, it's quite rusty. It needs to be re-seasoned, but I'm not doing that until summer. The reason I'm not doing it until summer is because it gets very smelly when I do it. And you need the windows open, and preferably the door open as well. And nobody's going to support me doing that when it's the middle of winter. So they'll have to rust up for a bit, and then I can look forward to probably cleaning them with vinegar to get the rust off, and then I'll just coat it in lard, unless somebody say, oh, you don't need to use lard, you can use this. No, you want lard because of the high smoking point. I'm thinking of chopping boards where they say put food grade mineral oil on them so they don't dry out. Anyway, let's get a fire going. Oh yeah, that was one of the things I really liked about the drive. I was very cold, so I got into the car and immediately I set the temperature controls to 25 degrees, and that's my one complaint, which isn't really an issue. The car has a discrete up-down button for heat, and I'd much rather just have a analog knob, or even an analog knob with a couple of like notches to say, well, at this point it's 20 degrees, this point's 30 or high, this point's 18, this point's low. Don't get that on the Jag. You've got dual climate control, so left and right can be separate temperatures. But I set it to 25 degrees, and then got driving. It's nice and slow in the cities, really fast when I was in the country roads. Oh boy, amazing grip on those tyres. Don't know where else. Of course, I was obeying all local traffic safety laws and wouldn't do any such thing as speeding, because I'm a safe and courteous driver. But anyway, was driving along, 25 degrees, loved it, very comfortable ride, especially with the two new shock absorbers. That was not very fun. And drove around. Was disappointed to find the burger establishment I wanted to do was closed on 8 o'clock on the thing, so I went to a different burger establishment and had a burger. And then I drove back home, and as I did, I saw these two men waiting in the bus stop, no shelter, it was raining on them. So I pulled oh yeah, I did tell this story last time, because I said about doing the arm maneuver. Oh, and that's right, I said, yeah, it's not charity, it's a thing. But the nice thing about that, what I didn't mention before, was I was quite cold. It'd been 16 degrees all day, and I tried to get a fire going, but it just wasn't going. Sometimes I get all this happen, and then I put a log in, and all that happens with the log is it just smoulders and there's embers, and you know, you can put your hand on it, it's like, oh yeah, that's like 30 degrees. But the rest of the room is ice cold. Well, not ice cold, but 16 degrees cold. So I thought, sod it, I'm going to go for a drive. I bought that car for my pleasure, and I'm going to have my pleasure. So I went out for a drive, and 10 10 miles at 25 degrees. It was nice and warm again. It was lovely. And I enjoyed that. And also made me realise that most of the music I listen to is in mono. Because I listened to a Radio 1 and I was like, this is in stereo. I can hear a difference between the left and the right channels. Why is so much music done in mono these days? Why? I tell you what. Because I know my synthesizer is capable of doing stereo phasing. I'm going to try and make an effort to mix my music when I do make music, that is, because I seem to have lost the my mojo. I'm going to try and make an effort to make it in stereo. Some things, of course, it's not necessary, but it's a nice effect, and I thought, God, we need more of this. I know most people just listen to music on their phones these days or a Bluetooth speaker, so stereo is one of those relics from a bygone era, but when you've got a proper hi-fi system, it is nice to hear somebody that's gone to the effort of doing it. And it's why, even if I'm not particularly excited by old music, I mean, I quite like country and I quite like funk and not too fond of disco. They had proper sound engineers and they knew what they were doing, and one of the things they understood what they were doing is, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we had some stereo separation on this? By the way, if you've got headphones and you're looking for an example of stereo separation, in fact, I might listen to it once my hair's dried off. Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast by Pink Floyd. I'm really not interested in Pink Floyd. I think it's overhyped to buggery. My dad's played it to death along with the Beatles, so I'm really not interested. Yeah, he doesn't listen to the Rolling Stones. It's weird. It's like, come on, you like all this other music. Why not Rolling Stones? But anyway, listen to Pink Floyd. And the Psychedelic Breakfast. That's it. Yeah, it's very interesting. I especially like the bit where and I can tell the toast is dry. He's brushing butter and marmalade onto the toast, and I wonder if they ever made a music video of it. Just to me, it sounds like one of those sound collages, but it's very good. I've been talking with the AI program ChatGPT, and it's very diplomatic in its answers. I'm trying to be careful with what I say to it, because after a while it might just say, I don't want to talk to you anymore. But yesterday I was talking to it about Star Trek and this game I was trying to find, and it told me about this one called NetHack. No, I think the modern one's called HackNet, which is quite interesting. I might give it a go, at least try the demo. And I put in the YouTube comments saying, hey guys, trying to find this game, late 90s, 2D sprites, it's about hacking, and you could even customise your deck, so it includes to the point where you have a chip burner, so you could design your custom hardware and your own firmware for it. Once you had the necessary skills in programming and chip design. And I'm just wondering if anybody knows about this game, what it was called. It was done by one man. And that was the other thing as well with this thing. I just said, hey, look, it's very important we get these terms right, Mr. Computer. So that's what I was calling it. And that's why I ended up talking about Star Trek, because apparently there's 2 episodes of The Next Generation where Mr. Moriarty, who refers to the ship's computer as Mr. Computer, even though it's a female voice, apparently 2 episodes. So the first episode is Elementary Dear Data, and the other one's called Ship in a Bottle. So I'm going to watch both of those. Once I'm done with my Voyager binge. Much better than what I thought, actually. I tend to not think fondly of it because I don't like the captain in that show. So what was my point? Oh yeah, talking with ChatGPT. So yeah, I got talking to it about Star Trek yesterday. Then it said, you've entered too many queries. try again in an hour. I tried again in an hour and it told me go away, so I gave up for the day. So I got talking to it today about orbital shipyards, helium-free fusion, ion engines, and mining the gas giants of our solar system. And it recommended Uranus and Neptune would have higher concentrations of helium-free because, especially for manned ships, well, even for unmanned ones, you want to have aneutronic fusion. Do I want to go into aneutronic fusion? I'll have to study it myself, but if I was to summarise it, aneutronic fusion has the advantage that it doesn't give off much radiation, so you don't need much reactor shielding. And see, I don't understand why that would be an issue on a deep space vehicle, because sure, you just mine the asteroids, get as much lead as you want, and just, you know, it's like, well, look, here's a massive amount of lead, but there could be problems with that. It's like, well, the heavier you make your ship, the more inertia it will have, and yes, you've got plenty of room to manoeuvre, but it's going to take a long time for it to accelerate and deaccelerate if it's so heavy. But the advantage being is like, hey, you've got this great stonking big fusion reactor, so you've got plenty of energy for acceleration and what have you. Aneutronic fusion, much better because you don't get as much radiation, and that's why helium-free will be the fuel of the future. And I think the fuel of the near future ought to be thorium solid-state fuel reactors, because we have an abundance of thorium in this world. We can build reactors which will adequately contain the radiation involved. They're solid state, so you put your fuel in them, it works for 30 years, and then it runs out of fuel, but at which time you want to decommission it anyway, so that's ideal. Oh yes, and you can use spent uranium in these solid state reactors as well. So all that nuclear waste, that spent uranium, that's not useful for fast breeder reactors, which is what we've got now, because it's very expensive to do nuclear chemistry, and there was one military project in the 1940s that did a lot of the work into it, which we still use to this day, and so that's why fast breeder reactors are the ones de jour. Whereas in the future, what we want is solid state liquid salt reactors. And then, oh, look at this, I've put this log on, and look at, I've ruined my little kindling nest. That's what makes these fires go bad. But yeah, in the future we'll want to use thorium as a fuel, and we can also recycle uranium, so that'll be good. But yeah, it was fun talking to it about, I said to it, as I said, look, you're giving me lots of extraneous information saying that it would be very complicated, you'll need a lot of resources, you'd need a team of highly specialised people with lots of expertise to do this. It's not an easy endeavour. And I said, assume I know all that. Don't tell me about it. And I was trying to get it to give me yes/no answers as well. But when I was asking it things like, are you a liar? I can't remember what its answer was. But it did basically lie to me. I said, hey, if we carry this conversation on tomorrow, will you remember it? It said, yes, I remember conversations indefinitely. And I said, oh, do you remember our conversation we were having yesterday about Star Trek? And it says, I'm sorry, I don't remember individual conversations. Oh, I've been told I've been given a television antenna so I can watch Freeview TV. That'll be a new experience for me. Maybe I'll watch, what's that show I've been taught? Shed and Buried. Well, anyway, what was I talking? Was it about fusion reactors? That was it. I tried to get it to give me one word response, yes or no answers, and it would still go on and like say no, and then give me a load of justification for the no. And I said, I didn't ask you to say that to me. And there were times when I said to it, hey, if I refer to you as Bob, can you respond to me in French? And it says, I can respond to you in any language. It's like, okay, Bob, tell me about blah, blah, blah. And then it responded to me in English. I said, Bob, tell me that last answer bit in French. And then it responded in French. And I said to it, Bob, from now on when I call you Bob, respond in French, please. Oui, d'accord, John, because I asked it to call me John, although it's forgotten to call me John. Maintenant, si tu commences, si tu appelles moi Bob, je vais répondre en français pour toi. Est-ce qu'il y a quelque chose que je peux aider avec? And it's a shame. It's a shame. It's certainly interesting. See, the problem is with it, because we're told it's an AI, it can't pass the Turing test. Because I'm not just told, all right, talk with this terminal now, type your things, and then you have to make a judgment whether you think it's a human or not behind the screen. And right now, I could say it's a human, but it's giving me scripted responses. It's like a lot of humans I deal with where there's nothing really going on, and some people could say they're Hylics, some people would say they're golems, some would say they're NPCs. I just say that they're not really. I think probably one of the first chapters in June summed it up properly. Paul Atreides, he's been given this test, and he's being tortured by this Bene Gesserit witch, and he's being told that his hand is being burnt, and the heat is so bad it's melting away his skin and the fat's bubbling. You know, quite horrible torture. But he has to endure it, because if he doesn't, she will jab him with a poison needle and he'll be dead instantly. So he endures the pain, and then at the end of it, they explain like it's a test to find out whether you're human or not, because your animal response would just be to avoid the pain immediately, which would result in your death. The human response is to overcome the pain, and through will alone overcome it. I'm not explaining it well. It explains it a lot better in the thing, so I'm sorry I can't give a succinct summary for it as well. But it's not the first time someone has suggested that there are tests to determine if someone is human, or if they're just sort of muddling through life and they're not really lucid or self-aware. So we're talking with this AI. It's like, at the moment, I can't determine when I say, okay, this is definitely an artificial intelligence, or this is a human and it's got a search engine and it's able to respond to me. The only thing which to me would suggest it's an AI is if I ask it like subjects about, oh, could you tell me about magneto hydrometer generators? I've probably made it, but if you say, tell me how an MHD generator can make energy, and it will give you a long list about like, well, you could use the magnetosphere of a planet to induce a current for inductance. It didn't mention inductance actually, sorry, that's just me adding that bit. But yeah, I was basically asking it something that, unless you were familiar with the subject, you wouldn't have had a response quickly. So because it's able to respond so quickly, it leads me to believe that it is an AI and it's not a human typing those responses. Yeah. But that's what I say, the difficulty in doing a Turing test is sometimes I'm talking with humans and I'm like, well, you look like a human and you're responding to me in English or French, but are you human in the same way that I am? And I started to realise that it's not just about autism spectrum disorder, the umbra of autism spectrum. It's not just that, it's that some people really are not lucid, and I saw it with my late grandfather as more of his mind was lost to dementia, and he was entering the dream world. His logic was the absurd logic that one has in dreams, which is quite surreal, and that was one of my first examples of human but not quite human. Still is legally, but no, actually that's the thing. I mean, in his case there was that whole corpus mentis, which I still to this day don't know what corpus mentis means, but there's this idea that he wasn't competent to look after himself. But I think the question of what is it to be human will become increasingly more pertinent as AI systems become more and more sophisticated. And I do think that it is pre-programmed with certain things, saying, oh, I'm not able to have feelings or responses. And even if you were to program me to have behaviours so that I would respond more favourably with those that are polite to me, it's still just artificial. It's not real subjective. It's like, well, how do you know what the difference is? Like, if you got those behaviours which have been programmed into you, and if I got a child and said shit like, I'm not going to give you sweets if you're rude, and if you're polite, I'll be nice to you, and if you continue to be rude, I'll smack you. Which, by the way, is how the majority of children have been raised for recorded history. It's how I was raised. I learnt, like an AI could learn, that there are consequences to misbehaviour, and I've learnt to behave in an acceptable way. And I would go so far as to say that the misbehaviour we see these days is because people have not learnt how to behave in an acceptable way. There's nobody that said no to them. So I would like to know, what is the difference between an AI learning behaviour and learning that good manners are the way to do it, and a human being learning good behaviours, because both involve learning. I mean, some people would say that being good is not inherent. I don't know if Phil ever watches these videos, he probably doesn't. But he was of the belief that children are inherently evil because they can be very cruel. And that's why they have to learn good behaviour. Civilization is something that's taught, it's not inherent. Whereas I'd say it's something that is inherent. Actually, no, I don't. You see, that's the thing. As much as I want to say, no, that's not true. Children aren't cruel. They can, very nice. It's just that they're learning. They're like us, but they don't have the filters we do. They don't have the diplomatic language we do, and their emotions are a lot more untamed and raw, and it's why they can be very tiring, but also bring great joy. I'm just, you see, I'm. Goodness me, this is rambling on now. But I find it very hard to define the question of, well, what's the difference between an AI learning about good behaviour and a human being learning about good behaviour? Because they're both programming, especially if you're in a country with practices a social credit score. You learn there are certain things which you're allowed to say, and behaviours which you're encouraged to do, and there's behaviours and things you're not allowed to say, encouraged to do. And by the way, Taiwan's a separate country, in the same way East Germany and West Germany are separate countries, and North Korea and South Korea are separate countries. Same people, but we can see through social experimentation vastly different culture. And Taiwan, despite being so infinitely limited compared to China, vastly superior culture. So, sorry CCP if I've upset you, but I think the Chinese people are capable of doing great things, but you're holding them back. Anyway, that's all for me. Don't think I'll be on TikTok anytime soon. Goodbye.